All right, so we're going to officially start the meeting, and we're going to do the flag salute. And you don't need to say it unless you really want to, but I do have a Pledge of Allegiance. So you can do sit, stand, kneel, whatever you want to do.
I'll do the pledge. I'm an American.
Yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yay, thank you. And Padre Bill, you ready for the prayer for the day?
Sure. Whenever we doubt the future, let us look into the hope of a child's eyes. When we make a promise to the young, let's ensure that we keep it. And if we treat adults and children with equal respect, our world will be a better place. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And Jerry, the thought of the day?
Okay. Your net worth to the world is usually determined by what remains after your bad habits are subtracted from your good ones.
A lot of subtraction in
Ben.
that case.
Yeah. Plus how much Bitcoin you have.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a couple announcements. The next meeting, May 13th, is going to be at PayPal Soccer Stadium. They just took it over. And Dee Connor, who knew Mike Trudeau and invited us there, but he said only 12 can attend. And the concessions won't be open, but we would get a tour of it. So I need to know who's in so we can see how many numbers. This could change. I don't know, because it's kind of weird if COVID's going down, they might allow more. But so let me know, put it in the chat or send me an email or a text message that you want to go. But I'm sure we've got plenty of spaces. Yes. Did somebody have a question?
No, I just said I'm in.
Oh, okay. Jerry's in.
I'm in too.
Jesse.
Yeah.
I'd like to go also if possible.
Okay, you got to pay for your own ticket though.
Yeah, okay.
Be down here.
What about Chris?
I lost him, but I'll ask him when he comes back.
Dave Olson. Dave Olson's in.
Tavernier's here too.
You wanna go? You driving.
Yeah.
Do
you wanna go?
Yeah.
No. Yeah?
No, we're going to Henry's Highlight after.
Okay, hurry up.
You put your dad's name down.
Okay, I'm putting down Ken and I'm putting down Chris.
Chris will be there. Chris, you want to go to?
All right. We got plenty of room.
Tour?
All right, the next
Yeah, 13.
announcement I have, are you guys listening?
Deja vu.
Jesus. Okay, Area 6 service project. So we're with Area 6, and every other year they have a project, a community project. This year they're going to be cleaning up a park, Gavilan Park in Morgan Hill. So it's June 12th. Just bring gloves, water bottle, snacks, and a mask unless you're vaccinated, or even if you are vaccinated. So this is June 12th. I'll be asking, and Rebecca will be asking, who's going to be attending this. And I think that's it for me. Okay, stop share. Okay, so welcome everybody. I just got one quick thing I want to do before we introduce our speaker. The charter party was successful. We had 46 people. It was a great time, great band. Everything was perfect, except for two things. One, I think we need to start fines, because now I can send a square payment to you and you can pay. And the first person is Chris. Chris, are you listening?
There he is.
Chris was really dancing a lot with the band, jumping around, jumped on a bench, and what do you know? He knocked over a beer, and yeah. He was also shaking his booty too. He was shaking that
Did they charge us
So-
for the bench?
Yeah. So since he broke a bottle and his friends had to clean it up, I helped. I'm charging you $25 cleanup fee.
Oh, okay, cool. I can handle
Now,
that.
the other fine goes to the spouse of the lobster cooker.
Yes.
So we were cooking rock lobster, which was very weird, very tasty, but it had a whole bunch of paws on it and everything. And we thought they were dead, but one got away somehow and went behind the oven. And I had to call and tell him, there's a lobster there. If you want to eat it, it's great, but you're going to have to get it out of the back of the oven somehow. So I'm finding myself $25 because I'm related to the lobster cooker.
All right.
Okay, and Ed Lucina's here. Thank you, Ed, for showing up. I just want to introduce a couple guests. Joyce is from Toastmasters. Thank you for coming. We're communicating, trying to see if we can both join each other's club. I have some friends here. Joel is a neighbor of mine, and I'm glad he came because I knew he would want to find out what's going on in New York. Seems like you guys all have some connection there. And my wife is here, Terry.
Hello,
She's
Terry.
here.
She's shunning you.
But anyway, thank you, Terry, for coming.
I'm here. Hello.
Okay. All right, great. So let's begin with our speaker today. He's the ultimate New York cartoonist insider. He's been a staff cartoonist for the New Yorker for 35 years and a cartoon editor since 1997. He sees over thousands of cartoons a week to help select the 15 or so that go into the magazine, which over its long and storied history has published over 80,000 of them. In this fast-paced and funny multimedia presentation featuring cartoons and video, Bob ushers you into the hollow halls of the New Yorker. So please give a warm welcome to Bob Mankoff, who's speaking to us all the way from New York.
All the way. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, before I start, let me say I was actually 40 years at the New Yorker as a cartoonist and cartoon editor. I sort of retired in 2017 to pursue other adventures. One of them is founding Cartoon Stock and Cartoon Collections, and I'm also now cartoon editor for Graydon Carter's online magazine called Airmail. But I had been there 40 years, and you know, when I left, I was 72. Now I'm 77, and I thought that I still had time to do a few more things. But let's actually talk about the main thing that I did do, which was be a cartoonist at the New Yorker and be cartoon editor for the New Yorker. Created the caption contest, and you know, if you lost the caption contest, I'm the reason you lost it. So if you're pissed off, you can vent there. But I'll share my screen, keynote, and share. I believe that's going to work. You can see the screen. Yeah. Is that all visible now to people? Yes. Good. All right, so this is a graphic I prepared, and you see Cartoon Stock on the bottom, and that's my company, cartoonstock.com, where I have 500,000 cartoons, and if you need them for a presentation or a present or licensing it for a book, anything. So this thing, I only read it for the cartoons. People often said about that, they used to say about Playboy that they only got it for the articles. So I don't know how much either one is true. Anyway, this is the company I run, the site, Cartoon Stock, where if you want cartoons about anything really, COVID, aluminum siding, anything. So a couple of years ago, I wrote a book about my experiences at the New Yorker, and it was called "How About Never? Is Never Good for You? My Life in Cartoons." And that now it costs $19.95. I don't think people are going to have time to read it, so I'm just going to do a very quick review here. Okay, this is the whole book. You don't have to pay for it. But you can see it's quite a bit. I wrote a lot and I put in a lot of cartoons. It's based on this cartoon, which I did in 1993, which has a guy on the phone saying, no Thursdays out. How about never is never good for you. So people wonder about, well, how do you make a living as a cartoonist? And one of the ways you make a living, you get paid for the cartoon. Probably back in 1993 from the New Yorker, I got paid about $1,000 to do it. But then through my company, one of them I founded, which was cartoonbank.com, which is like cartoon stock, you license the cartoon. It might be in a textbook. People might want it as a print. They might want it in a newsletter. Anytime, so it's sort of like songs. Every time it gets reprinted, you get paid for it. So this has been reprinted thousands of times. Each time, thankfully, I got paid for it. It's a cartoon that put my daughter through college at Barnard. And it also landed me in the Yale Book of Quotations. So there it is. Robert Mankoff, cartoonist, 1944, businessman talking on the telephone. No Thursdays out. How about never is never good for you. And I'm right alongside that other famous humorist, Mao Zedong. That's a joke. Okay, when the book came out, I was 70. Now I'm 77. So time flies when you're aging. And so here are the 3 jokes I made up when I became 70. Because one of the things about humor is humor is about everything that's sort of wrong, can never praise anything. So it was very nice about the Pledge of Allegiance and the prayer, but humor is the opposite of that. It never lifts anything up. It makes us deal with everything that's wrong, provided it's not really tragic. It's all about our foibles and our flaws, and it's a way to cope. So when you're getting older, you got to cope. And one of the ways I do it is with of course, whining and kvetching. I mean, when you're just pissing and moaning naturally as you get older. But my wife, see, I'm Jewish, so I'm a whiner. I mean, this is stereotypical. My wife is a wasp, which is good because I've been married 3 times. It just keeps getting better. But I find that every time I'm married to a Jewish person, they listen so much. They want to hear your complaints so that they can have a chance to complain. So it's like, okay, you complain now, I can complain. But if you're married to a wasp, they don't want to complain. So it's like talking to a wall when you're whining. Anyway, here are the 3 jokes about being 70. I'm 70. The good news is it could be worse. The bad news is it will be. I'm 70. The good news is 70 is the new 50. The bad news is dead is not the new alive. And finally, when you're 70 and you're a guy, you wake up stiff everywhere but where you want to be. Okay, so here, one of the things about doing the cartoons is that you own the cartoon, but you don't own the phrase. So people could use the phrase, and so people put it on T-shirts. How about never is never good for you? And they even put it on thongs. How about never is never good for you? And the only way you can try to get money back is to trademark the phrase, which I have, but still it's hard to get money from the people. The most they'll give you is like free thongs, and honestly, how many thongs does anybody need? Now, the New Yorker is really interesting because I published almost 1,000 cartoons there, and the New Yorker, going back to its origins in 1925, was very meticulous about record keeping. So every single cartoon that you had published would be put and pasted in a book, as well as eventually put in a database. So here's my book from the library, Mankoff, Robert, and when you're dead, they put the other part on, but I'm not dead yet, so we're moving on. Here are some of my cartoons to give you an idea of the kinds of things I create that I think are funny and hope other people will. Also, I'm sorry, dear, I wasn't listening. Could you repeat what you've said since we've been married? On the one hand, eliminating the middleman would result in lower costs, increased sales, and greater consumer satisfaction. On the other hand, with a middleman. As a matter of fact, you did catch us at a bad time. So one of the ways I'll talk about thinking about jokes, I look at these phrases. I mean, one of the things about being funny is just paying attention. what everybody else is ignoring and not thinking about, or is just, it's like the boilerplate of life. So I tried to just enjoy myself, even as I did when like we first got on. I just try to be funny, engage people, you know, look at what they're saying, the small talk. Like I've gone into, I view sort of everything as an opportunity, not necessarily to make a joke, but to find out, does someone want to break out of their role that they have, whether they're someone at Starbucks, you know, to see their human side, and that human side is often has to do with jokes, kidding around. So Starbucks, I was once at a Starbucks in Seattle, and I was the only person there. And I said, okay, I'm going to have this, whatever, you know, a latte. And they said, okay, what's your name? I said, well, why do you need my name? I'm the person here. Can't you just give it? Well, you know, we do need your name. I said, so I said to the person, I said, okay, Steve, but that's not my real name. So just, first of all, just seeing how someone reacts to that is interesting to me. Like, are they willing to break, and are they just going to maintain their role, which is only a role, you know, whether the waiter or the star, that's not who they are. That's just what they're doing. So it's interesting that whether they will do it, and then I might develop, then I might get ideas about that, which is, it's interesting now because we're so much about, you know, how we identify. And I realized that, well, Starbucks is the one place you can be anybody you want. You know, they could say, what's your name? And you could say Prince Philip. And then they would have to call out Prince Philip, which I just thought of because sometimes I just make up another name. And this is, while there's no reason yet to panic, I think it only prudent we make preparations to panic. Now, I do a lot of the cards, sometimes just jokes, but some of them, they relate to my own mentality, how I think about things. And when I do think about my general stance, it's like, what bad thing could happen? So, and that I want to proactively worry about things, you know. So, I mean, I once did a cartoon where the woman is saying, the guy going to bed saying, he's saying, I'm worried. He said, well, you can get up early in the morning. I said, get up in the world. I should get up early to worry, so I don't have to worry now. And sometimes I think about that, you know. So I'm always just turning things around in my head to see the variations of it. Okay, 1 billion is 1,000 million. Why wasn't I informed of this? Now, this is actually my comment on every financial crisis, because everybody always wants to make it seem as though it's complicated. You know what I mean? I didn't know, I wasn't informed. I can't be expected to look at everything. Some of these things involve long division. You know what I mean? So all of the crises are like this. I think I did the cartoon back in the late 80s when it was maybe a Bear Stearns thing, or someone in Hong Kong or some other place that had, you know, a whale who'd placed a huge bet. And I think it often comes down to something like this. Here's a cartoon got reprinted thousands of times. Is it funny? I don't know. It's sort of meaningful. It's sort of a view of the world. So a cartoon like this would get reprinted in a sociology textbook, a philosophy textbook, a psychology textbook, because it sort of is, well, it's sort of what the world is. And this is just a joke. The Empire State Building used to be outside my office. Now that's product placement. Funny. And here's just a joke. Hamlet's duplex doesn't mean to be, not to be. So one of the things about being funny is don't fight it. You know, if you can be smart, be smart. But if it strikes you as funny, you know, don't fight the tape. You know what I mean? Don't fight it. Just do it. So when people say, well, how do you come up with these ideas? My joke is, I think of them. How do you think I come up with them? I think of them. And it's interesting when I show this cartoon now, which is a cartoon of Auguste Rodin's sculptures of the Thinker and the Kiss. When I taught a class in the psychology of humor, 19-year-old kids don't even know what this is. They don't even know what the sculpture is. They don't even know what it's referring to. So that's one of the things about getting older and making jokes. The references that you're sure of may not work as references for other people. So I had my first cartoon in the New Yorker in 1977. And then 3 years later, I was selling quite a bit and I got a contract. I blurred out all the details about the drugs I got, or I used to make jokes now that I'm afraid to make jokes. But what's interesting here is the New Yorker contract for a cartoonist never mentioned cartoons. It said idea drawings, idea drawings. So the New Yorker was interested in something more than a joke. And because when you look at the history of the New Yorker, it had Saul Steinberg and Bill Steig. So there were a lot of drawings that weren't jokes, but also was sort of a little highfalutin way of them saying that a cartoon could be intellectual. It could be about thinking. It could be more than just a gag. So in 2014, when I had my memoir, there was a 60 Minutes. I wonder, are people going to be able to hear this, or did I have to do some sort of video thing? Do you know, Bill? Let's just see.
Hey, how are you?
Can you hear it?
Robert. Well, I suppose you came in here to show me cartoons.
Okay.
Every Wednesday, a nervous band of ink-stained wretches gathers at Bob Mankoff's office. Let's see what you got here. Okay. Hoping against hope to sell him a cartoon. As for what they're paid, no one's talking. How many have been accepted? I really don't know. There's the grizzled veteran, Sam Gross, who figures he's submitted 30,000 cartoons, give or take. 30,000? Yeah. Many consider this his masterpiece. A dog at Heaven's Gate asking, is there any chance of getting my testicles back? I still have to push the envelope. Sam has always pushed the envelope, things that you couldn't quite do. How you doing? Very well. There's always a little preliminary chit-chat. How you been? All right. Farley. Farley Katz specializes in the far out in both cartoons and facial hair. So what's going on with that mustache? Are you still entering the contest?
No, I retired from the circuit. This is all like a recreational mustache.
Okay. And then Mankoff speed reads the rough sketches. This is just too awkward to draw. Most get rejected. He's seen the idea in one form or another before.
You know, whenever they open your bag at an airport.
Carolina Johnson has an airport security cartoon with the TSA guy saying, you can pack this back up now.
Yeah.
Emily Flake has a joke featuring both King Kong and Godzilla.
The two heavy hitters in the monster world.
It's as simple as that. Maybe it's just a day for facial hair, but Joe Data seems to be a contender with a Tarzan cartoon.
The apes are saying, we found you and raised you as one of us. So we were just wondering, at what point did you learn to shave?
I have researched this. There's no iteration of Tarzan in literature, comic books, or movies in which he has facial hair. It makes no sense.
Right. Here's some of the stuff around.
This is just stage one, thinning out the candidates to take to the magazine's editor.
It's a little bit too straightforward.
He's largely non-committal, pleasant but blunt.
It won't look right in our magazine.
When a drawing simply isn't good enough.
We're not that impressed. Okay, next. It doesn't have enough charm.
So that is sort of the 60 Minutes, but that really, for the most part, that's a very compressed and artificial way of looking at what I did. Now, I did see people on Tuesdays, so I'd often see 50, 60, 70 people, and really anybody could come in. But mainly what I did would be looking at over 1,000 cartoons and also dealing with individual cartoonists. I don't know, he said, he said I was pleasant but blunt. I don't know if everybody thought I was pleasant. It's just a situation that you're seeing so many people. There would be a whole office full of people that you have to see. And often you did have to be blunt with them. And because it was an open call, you know, sometimes you just said, hey, this is, you didn't want them to come back. They're perfectly fine people. They were just terrible cartoonists. But what I did was then most of the stuff would come in, not in person, but in the mail, or actually not mail anymore, but email. And so I'd look at these thousands of cartoons and have to decide. Now, I will say this. I mean, I think I talked earlier about before we had the actual presentation start, about the difficulty of becoming a connoisseur. Anybody who really cares about something and makes fine distinctions about it in order to make choices ends up not enjoying it that much. It's not like you can't make the right choices, but you don't viscerally experience what a normal person experiences when they just laugh, because you're viewing it for a different objective. This is William Hogarth's The Laughing Audience, done in about 1760 something. So everybody's laughing except this is the guy, the critic. This is the guy who has to review the play. So you could be sure of that. If you went into a Broadway show in a comedy, you could be sure the guy with the pencil or the woman with the pen or whatever there is writing down is not laughing. So I had to watch out that I didn't become that person over time and could still actually understand what was funny. So I came up with, here's some rules for my looking at cartoons. Originality is overrated, but it'll definitely be overrated by somebody who sees a lot of material and is bored by material they see often, which an ordinary audience will like, right? An audience doesn't see 1,000 cartoons, so you always had to keep that in mind. So this is the very first Desert Island cartoon, 1931. And that became a cliche, the Desert Island cartoon. So you see the island is a little big, you have to live on it, but 1931, I claimed this island for the USA and the Alfred R. Whipple Real Estate Company of Muscatine, Iowa. By 1951, the island has become much smaller, and it's a cliche by now. And of course, it's about what concerns people in 1951 if they were on a desert island, and very sexist. And when we look at it now, and the woman is saying, gosh, Miss Maxwell, with all those other girls on the boat, I never thought you'd give me a tumble. But by 1997, which is a long time ago, it's a cartoon that's very relevant. What's our immigration policy? But also the island is a place, clearly there's not any real desert island where no one could possibly exist on that. Rule 2 is it's actually been done. So the New Yorker published 80,000 cartoons, and we would have a pretty good database. So every time we would see a cartoon and select it, we would be checked against all the cartoons that previously ran. So I did this cartoon, Let Me Through, I'm the Victim, back in 1993. I think it's a very good cartoon because I think it speaks a lot to woke culture where everybody is the victim now, except the victim themselves. Anyway, I got this cartoon from David Cypress, a great cartoonist, a number of years later. He didn't copy me, he just came up with the same idea. So this would be, I'm not going to be talking about the caption contest, which we get 10,000 entries every week for, but you don't get 10,000 different entries. Point is, different people come up with the identical idea, everything. And that goes back to this idea that originality is overrated. For the most part, your ideas can be good, but they're rarely original. Amateurs think they're amateurs when they get an idea, are absolutely sure their idea is original. And that's one difference, I think, in life in general between a person who's an amateur and a professional. An amateur thinks everything they do is good. A professional thinks everything they do sort of sucks and could be better. Okay, so here's another similar cartoon submitted the same week. I know where he is now. I want to know why. There's Waldo, and then, okay, where is he? So two people in the same week coming up with the identical, essentially the identical cartoon. So this is sort of a lesson, it could be a lesson about humor, but it's really a lesson about creativity, about songs, about novels, about writing, about scripts, about everything. Rule 3, play favorites as in favorite cartoonists. So over time, cartoonists become successful, like Roz Chast. So this is her take on insomnia Jeopardy. So here it is. Ways in things that keep you up. Ways in which people have wronged me. Strange noises. Diseases I probably have. Money troubles. Why did I say do that? And ideas for a screenplay. So that's her take. Roz has been doing cartoons since the 70s. What I mean by play favorites is people think things are funny or they're not. It's not really the way. If you have responded to a person or their cartoons or a comedian who you thought is funny, everything they say will be funnier than the exact same thing said by somebody else. So it's just from a practical matter. It's why you have stars in movies, okay? This is Drew Dernovitz, same idea, insomnia. When I can't sleep, I find that it sometimes helps to get up and jot down my anxieties. And this is one of my cartoons. I can't sleep. I just got this incredible craving for capital. Rule 4, you play favorites, but when I was cartoon editor, at least 100 new cartoonists came in to do cartoons. So you have a bias towards people who've done good work and you tend to favor them, but not so much that you exclude everybody else. It's pretty much like a sports team, right? You're going to sort of go with the people who are your team. You're going to favor them, but you're going to always be looking for rookies and new people who can help you. And so these are all new people I brought in the magazine. And this is Liam Waltz, and he's going to explain to you how he got an idea for a cartoon. Go, Liam.
I'm going to explain a cartoon that was popular, made the rounds of Facebook, and it seems to have struck a chord with people, which was this one of a guy wearing the dog cone around his neck and saying, I was looking back at some of my old notebooks, and the way it seems to have started was I was in an airport at one point and wrote down an idea for meditation with a shock collar. So I think that was the first time that I had the idea of crossing some sort of pet training device with humans and with attention, I guess. Up to the shock collar idea sort of worked its way through my brain for a while, and I started playing around with the idea of the RCA Victor dog who sits next to the gramophone, and I was using the cone of the gramophone as a cone around his neck. The only thing I came up with is he's saying to another Dalmatian, don't ask. So probably better that you don't either. The next page is a dog wearing a lampshade around his neck, and the other dog is saying, oh, Neville, you crazy party animal. It was a trope in Garfield when I was growing up that a party animal always wears the lampshade on his head. Then that was all, nothing else. And then the rest of this book, nothing else came of that until a few weeks later, it just pops up out of nowhere. I guess I've been thinking about dogs because I have a guy using a remote to turn a dog on and off or to make a dog sit, and it says Dogmatic. And then out of that, just suddenly I have it. It's supposed to keep me from compulsively checking my phone. And unfortunately, it also, I was playing around with the idea, seeing where I could go with it. And unfortunately, it also says licking my scab and licking my butthole. So you can edit that out. And there it is. He's at a party. He has the cone around his neck. He's talking to a woman. That was basically the idea. And it looks like it just appeared out of nowhere, but I think that it was all sort of sifting through my brain. So out of each notebook, sometimes I'll have 3 or 4 cartoons out of each notebook, and sometimes there'll be notebooks that are just vast, barren deserts of terrible ideas that may someday become better ideas.
So that's sort of interesting because I think it's, in general, a paradigm for all creativity. That's how it works. You know what I mean? Getting any kind of idea is hard. It's very hard to do it by brute force. You know what I mean? You sort of work at it, you look away from it, and it comes back to you. I mean, I think with humor and certain times of creativity, it's kind of daydreaming, almost dreaming while awake. You have to let your mind relax because the associations you're making are not natural associations. They're not completely realistic. They're remote. They're almost like the images you get in a dream. And so just this, a lot of time that you spend as a cartoonist, it doesn't look like you're doing anything. And certainly that's what my wives have thought. We're not doing anything, but I might be juggling, I might be playing ping pong, but in the back of my head, I can't, you can't, it would be like the same thing with songwriting. You can't just force it. Or, you know what it's a little bit like? It's a little bit like when you have something on the tip of your tongue and you can't remember it, and the harder you try, the more difficult it becomes. So as you're noodling around these ideas, you have to do other things. You sort of look away from them. And then once you get the basic idea, then you can like work on it in a straightforward way. You can start to hone the caption. You could say, well, where is the punchline? But this thing of just getting ideas in them, in a way they have to, just like they did with Liam, you have to prepare the background. And in a way, it's a lot of the bad ideas that lead to the good ideas. I think, for instance, for people who enter the caption contest, who say, well, how should I do? Most people look at a caption contest, they can come up with nothing because they're trying to think of a good idea rather than any idea at all. So that's sort of a model of creativity. Just try to come up with something, even sometimes try to come up with a bad caption for a caption contest, and that'll start you on the road. Rule 5 is, I don't know what is happening there. Well, is new news is good news, which means that topical cartoons are always going to have something going for them. It's like familiarity. Everything that someone becomes very familiar with, it's easy to make a joke at. And if the familiarity is through the news, that's also the case. So for a couple of years ago, there was this stupid thing, just looking at it. I like it that it's the scientific 7-minute workout. Yeah. Who won the Nobel Prize for this? I want to know, what was the actual science? So for me, looking at this is, I would call it how to hurt yourself fast. Honestly, if you looked at this, does this really make sense that you should be running around doing this from one thing to another? The rehab wards are going to be full of people that did the 7-minute workout. Anyway, when that comes out, then Roz Chast would make fun of it with the 7-second workout. And it's not a great cartoon. It's just sort of exaggerating the insanity of, that kind of workout. Rule 6 is location, which is another way of saying audience. Everything depends on an audience. We have all types of humor. The humor that's in your head is different than the humor that you would say to anybody, and different than the humor that you would share, and different than the humor you would tell a friend or your grandma. That's just obvious. And it's a rule, but there's no hard and fast rule. But if the purpose of a joke is to have someone laugh, then you want to know who your audience is. And location, when it appeared in the New Yorker, it's a very serious audience. They got serious articles. It's a magazine that cares about everything, or at least poses to care about everything, and makes you very empathetic. And tremendous empathy is the opposite of humor. A lot of humor is aggressive or making fun of someone. If you care so much about everyone, if you love everyone and you care so much about everything, then you're less likely to see the foibles and sort of the dark side of what people actually are. And that's the place where humor comes from. Mark Twain said the secret source of humor is not joy, but sorrow. There's no cartoons about good marriage, good sex, good relationships. No cartoons about that. So therefore, the New Yorker is creating a very empathetic environment, which makes it difficult. Because look at this cartoon, it's very benign, right? It shows this old guy, he's getting older, and it's the opposite. It's a very funny cartoon, but look at the response I got. Email a comment on this cartoon. Another joke on old white males, haha, the wit. It's nice, I'm sure, to be young and rude, but someday you'll be old unless you drop dead as I wish. Cordially, Robert Byron. Man, you can't get more cordial than old Bob Byron. He's missed the cordiality. Actually, he's making a joke, sort of, but it shows you how touchy that kind of, frankly, left-leaning audience could be. Here's another cartoon done in the 90s, discouraging data on the antidepressant. Now, suicide is a bad thing. There's no question about it. But this cartoon is not really about that. It's about our desire for both ourselves and the pharmaceutical companies to medicate us out of our existential dread. And the discouraging data is not so much for the poor little rodent, but for the pharmaceutical company. So before I was a cartoonist, I was a psychologist on the cusp of my PhD, but it turned out to be the world's longest cusp. But so I would do surveys looking at how people responded to cartoons. And so most people liked the cartoons. You know, they could rate it a 10, and 109 people rated it a 10, but other people didn't like it so much. The person, I don't know, can I move this around? I don't know, I guess I can't. You know, 3 points. I like animals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't want to hurt them. That doesn't seem very funny to me. And the person rated it only 2. I don't like to see animals suffer, even in cartoons. So I called this person up and I said, they can't suffer. It's a cartoon. They're not suffering. Everybody is okay. We're using anesthetic ink, but honestly, once a person does that, nothing is going to convince them. Look at this cartoon. I've only been gluten-free for a week, but I'm already really annoying. Now, something like that, we're getting more outrage from, and so here, what the person wrote: shame on you people for publishing your cartoon. I've only been gluten-free a week. Blah, blah. For those of us with celiac disease, I find it very insensitive and offensive. Now, it's not about people who have celiac disease. You couldn't have supermarkets full of gluten-free food for dogs. For dogs, if it was about celiac disease. My joke that I used to make, I'm a little careful about it now, this is not for people with about people with celiac disease. This is people who wish they had celiac disease. Or celiac disease envy. And my daughter is gluten-free. Not that she has celiac disease. Her boyfriend is gluten-free. Not that he has celiac disease. For 3 or 4 years, every time they come here, do I complain? Do I say anything? No, we buy them all the horrible gluten-free sawdust food. But anyway, and then my other nasty joke is, we live, try walking a mile in our shoes. And so I would say, well, as regards this person, that would be a good idea because you'd be a mile away from them and you'd have their shoes. What are they going to do? Run after you? You got their shoes. Of course, not always is it the case that people are offended. Sometimes they just don't get the cartoons. Here's a pretty well-known episode of Seinfeld from the 90s where Elaine doesn't get the cartoon.
Cartoon in the New Yorker. I don't get this.
Me neither.
And you're on the fringe of the humor business. George, look at this.
That's cute.
You get it?
No, never mind.
We're 2 intelligent people here. We can figure this out. A dog and cat in an office.
It looks like my accountant's office. There's no pets working there.
The cat is saying, I've enjoyed reading your email.
It's got something to do with that 42 in the corner.
That's a page number.
But I can't crack this one.
What a great show. And the guy who wrote this, Yorker Caption, was a cartoonist for the New Yorker. This is back in the late 90s. So one of the things to remember about a cartoon, and maybe cartoons in general, is sometimes the simplest caption is the best. Sort of makes you stop and think, doesn't it? Anyway, I hope I've made you stop and think. And now I've got to stop sharing. I hope I can stop sharing. And then I can take your questions, I guess. So
Great.
That concludes my presentation.
All right, is there questions?
Any
Don't be
questions?
shy.
Go ahead.
I have
Bill
one.
does.
We've concentrated on the ideas of the cartoonist, but what about development of visual styles, of drawing styles? Where do people come from arts backgrounds or?
Some of them do, most of them don't. I mean, when you look back on the 30s and 40s, the style there would have been much more realistic, much greater draftsmanship. But in the culture in general, what you see, and in the 30s and 40s, the person who did the cartoon didn't necessarily come up with the idea. So it was more like, one way to look at it is like, look at singers from the 40s. you didn't, so Frank Sinatra or Bing Crosby, oh, wow, boy, these people really have great voices, right? But they're not expected to come up with the songs. By the time you get to the 60s and 70s with rock, Bob Dylan, all sorts of other things, you're looking more for one package, more authenticity, right? So, so therefore the drawing standards became loosened, but also interesting in a way, in that a very formal style, I don't think necessarily worked very well with cartoons. So a simplified style that many more people could do, just as a simplified singing style in terms of rock, right? So whether you like rock or not, there's obviously a lot of great rock music, but if everybody had to have the vocal talent, let's say of Pavarotti, then you would greatly limit it. So I think there's a sweet spot where it can go too far one way or the other, but I think we like the idea that there's the one person is doing that. But even within so you might lack a certain degree of facility or draftsmanship, but that doesn't mean you couldn't develop an effective style of singing. I mean, a good example of that, I think, because I was just reading the autobiography of Bruce Springsteen. Now, is Bruce Springsteen a great singer? He's a great singer for what he sings. He's a great singer for what he sings. In other words, he found the right kind of media for what he does. And that, I think that's true of the cartoonist also. Finding the right, you can have you can even have good, bad drawing, just like you can have good, bad singing in a way. I mean, if you like someone like Tom Waits, a gravelly voice, something like that, it's interesting. But I think but even within that, I would always push a person to make their style better, make it more effective, simplify it so that the art didn't get away in the joke. Sometimes you found a person who really wasn't that very good at drawing who would try to gussy it up with the parts they could draw or try to make it overly fancy. So that's sort of my answer to that. I hope that's
I had a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the genesis of cartoons in the magazine, and then how did the cartoons in the magazine differ than the illustrations on the cover?
Oh, completely, really. The cartoons in the originally the covers are really an illustration, and often there was most of the history of the New Yorker, most of the covers didn't have anything humorous. They were sort of decorative.
Yeah.
And so the covers are often not a gag, and the cartoons in the magazine are, and there's a cartoon editor, and then there's a cover editor. So they're two completely different animals, and especially Francois Moulet, who's the cover editor now. Once Tina Brown took over, and then David Remnick took over, the covers became much more topical and even political. Certainly when Trump was there, so just very, very different.
Yeah. So did the originals, like back in the 1920s, did they have cartoons in them? Or when did the cartoons start in the magazine?
1925.
Okay, all right.
I mean, I have that, but they wouldn't look like the cartoons you are seeing now. In which there's a single caption under an image or no caption at all. They were sort of more set pieces. And going back to the origin of cartoons in magazines, it goes back to the 1840s with Punch magazine. And they're much more like almost sitcoms, whole pieces where lots of people are talking, almost like a comic with lots of people talking. So satirical cartoons go back to Punch in England in the 40s, and there's cartoons as satire, going back maybe to the 1700s. But the magazine cartoon starts with Punch, and by the 1890s in America, one of the things is the development of the idea of being funny or a sense of humor in America really takes off in the 19th century, especially after the Civil War. Only after the Civil War do you really have a lot of ways to make money by being funny, by writing jokes and getting them published in newspapers, by vaudeville. See, vaudeville is huge in the 1880s. Vaudeville is the first mass media entertainment all over the United States, which if anybody can remember what the Ed Sullivan Show was like, Ed Sullivan was a kind of vaudeville. There'd be one actor after another, but not for an hour. It would start at 10 o'clock in the morning and end at 10 o'clock at night. And it would be all over the country where there would be a dog, that'd be called like a dumb act, which meant that people could come in and no one was talking. Could be an animal act. Then there'd be an acrobat act. Then there'd be a comic act. And right in the middle, there might be a little, there might be a one act of Shakespeare. And so it's almost like thinking of what YouTube is like now, where you could just go around and see a million different things. But humor was a huge part of it, and a huge part in which you can make a lot of money. So for the first time, there are comics. They're not called stand-up, but like Fred Allen, who was a famous radio comedian, they might be juggler comics. That's how W.C. Fields got his start, where there'd be someone doing juggling, dropping the clubs, making jokes, and that would give the time for another act behind the curtain to get ready. Could be a big acrobat act, but you could make money being funny. And you could make money being funny, and you could make money writing for someone who was funny. So all of that is part of the commercialization of comedy, which then, of course, leads to films, silent films, which are very heavily comic, and then radio. And magazines. So the New Yorker is published in 25. It does very well in the Depression, and it sets the stage for a lot of other magazines to carry humor. And originally the New Yorker was a humorous magazine, carry humor and cartoons. And now, unfortunately, hardly any magazines exist, of course, and very few carry cartoons, except the New Yorker.
Yeah, thank you. So one last question with tying into that. So how does your new venture, are you kind of the same thing where people are submitting you work? And you say it's cool.
Yeah, I'm Graydon Carter's airmail. That's true. And on my my company, which is trying to click this on. I'll just show. What am I supposed to?
Cartoon stock.
Yeah, cartoon stock. So I'm sharing the screen on cartoon stock. So. I guess this is cartoon stock, I guess. Share screen. I don't know if you can see it. So you can search for really, so this is what I run. If I'm searching for financial cartoons, then all of these will come up like this, and then you can buy the cartoon or you can get a product for those cartoons. So that's sort of the business I set up. One of the, oh, how do I stop sharing? What am I doing? Okay, I've got to stop sharing this. Did I stop sharing? Did I ever end up sharing it? No.
No.
I never ended up sharing it. No, I got to plug my,
yeah, so real quick, so do you still have artists like submitting stuff to you to put them up on your site?
Absolutely, both on on cartoon stock, we sign artists up to the company's cartoon collections, its own cartoon stock. Once we sign them up, if we don't sign anybody up, then they can upload their cartoons. We tag and keyword the cartoons, and then people can license the cartoons as a product, and we split half the money with the cartoonists. So one of the missions of the company is to support cartoonists. And that's what I did also at the New Yorker, because it's hard to make money in creative fields. It just is really hard. There's so much competition, and therefore part of my life mission is to make it possible for someone to have a career in this. See, when I got a contract for the New Yorker, I could make enough money just selling cartoons to the New Yorker and reprints to not have to do anything else. No one can really do that anymore. First of all, there just aren't many other magazines in which you could sell to. So everybody who is a creative in this way usually is just part of the scrambling, which is, I don't think we have to cry for people like that, because they always could get some horrible, miserable job in the motor vehicle department, and waste the rest of their life. But, you know, I'm trying, I encourage people to, if you're going to waste your life, you might as well waste it creatively. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Whoa, there we go.
I got a question here.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
a cartoonist would, in wanting to make money, right? Would I submit my cartoon to Playboy? Does that pay more, or does the
Playboy doesn't even exist anymore.
Oh, it doesn't.
Really?
No, you can.
How old these guys are over here.
I know you're heartbroken.
I had no idea.
Oh, Playboy doesn't exist anymore because honestly, the porn business.
Well, did it used to pay more?
Oh, the New Yorker always paid more.
Oh, really? Okay, that's the top cartoon.
New Yorker paid more. I mean, when I left, you would get $1,400 for a cartoon, which is not a huge amount of money, but is at least something. So, really, like, for example, I did cartoons from really, you know, starting in '77. But then the New Yorker also would be a showcase. So people would see your cartoons. You might get an advertising job, which would pay a lot of money. But you were always scrambling. You're always thinking, and then you might get another gig for another magazine or for a newspaper. But that's, you know, that's just I mean, that's the nature of the creative pyramid, whether it's actors or anybody else, right? Let's say you want to be an actor. It may work out for you, but there's a tiny little sliver really making a lot of money, and most people make very little money. But you know that well,
That's
I mean,
nature of it.
That's just nature.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Another question.
Yeah,
Bob, there's a.
Yeah, I just.
Go ahead.
So I just was wondering, one, do you have to have a subscription to be in the contest of the cartoon contest in the New Yorker?
No.
Okay. And what do you win? Fame, fortune? Yeah.
You win nothing, but it's a big deal for people. Roger Ebert entered 107 times, and you'd be surprised what a huge deal it is for people to win. And I do. By the way, I'll send you, Bill. I'm doing a Facebook Live on the caption contest tomorrow at noon Eastern Standard Time, so it'll be 9 your time, in which I'm talking all about the caption contest. I do these Facebook Live events usually every month where I talk about some sort of topic. And I'll also be interviewing Lawrence Wood, the guy who's won the caption contest 7 times. So, you know, he's going to give us his secrets, and then just all sorts of interesting things. People have used the caption contest in literature classes to teach compact writing, you know, because usually it's not enough to write well to win the caption contest, but your sentence should be sort of well formed. The punchline should come at the end. It should be as concise as possible. And it's just a really interesting task, and that it's also used in business school as a way to sort of, okay, how do you, like, it's one thing to talk abstractly about coming up with new ideas. You know, we have to come up with innovative approaches to integrate millennials with boomers in our consumer, you know, someone will write something like that for a business plan. Okay, but that's not an idea. Okay, what's your idea? The caption contest really focuses you on, and in a very brutal way of saying, you got an idea or don't you have an idea? You have anything? I was looking at the caption contest for the New Yorker this week. It shows 2 firemen. They're looking down in one pole, which, you know, just the pole that they go down, and it has a round hole. And the other pole is also, but it has a square hole. So you want to think about that. And so I'm going to try to come up with my responses to that. But, you know, the first thing I thought about was, this wasn't on the test, you know, there's a fireman's test. because, you know what I mean? Or then I would associate to that, and I said, I know why we wear red suspenders, because that was another old joke that would people see in that one. People would have to know the reference. See, I like a joke where I'm making a joke, and then I have a theory of mind. because I know the joke I make, I know what you should be thinking, which is, it's not all explained. So if I made the joke where the guy was puzzled looking at those things, says, puzzled, like, I know why we wear red suspenders, then someone would have to know there was this old riddle, silly riddle, as a kid, why does a fireman wear red suspenders? And you'd think it said, to keep his pants up. So that was the joke. So yeah, so all of it. So I think it's I feel that humor itself is interesting, very interesting. I take a course in the psychology of humor. We're the only species on the planet that have it, and every culture that's ever existed has it. You know what I mean? It's a universal, not just laughter, but humor itself. So it's something sort of fascinating about human beings, and that, remember the old Star Treks, they're always going to different places and different worlds. And I could imagine a Star Trek where they go to a different world and everything is the same. And then eventually Spock doesn't realize it, but Kirk does. Nobody's laughing. There's no humor, which logically the world could go on without it, it seems, and yet it's everywhere. So, and I'm happy that I'm part of it. So any more questions? And if not, I will go back. We can each go back to our lives already in progress.
I got one more. This is a business question. There's a hot new thing in the art world. I think they're
NFTs.
Yeah, how about cartoons?
I don't know. I mean, how much bullshit can you really stand?
The world appears to be having
I actually understand this stuff pretty well because I actually have some Ether and Bitcoin, and I might eventually invest in it. But here, at least, I understand what a Bitcoin is. Strangely enough, it really is just another way. We already have money that's very much like it. A Bitcoin is a fungible token.
Right.
It's what a dollar is. It's a fungible token. And now, because money has been, especially during the pandemic, has been so separated from its physicality now, I can't even find cash to tip the parking attendants anymore. We understand all that's happening is essentially these fungible tokens are moving back and forth. But the NFTs are so bizarre because you're selling an NFT which says that you own not the document, not the thing, not the cartoon, not the reproduction of it, nothing at all, but this thing that at a particular moment on the blockchain that was related to it. So I don't quite understand that. But in a way, it's not completely unrelated to, it's almost a satirization of collectability, right? Because when you really think about, originally people who collect things actually like the things in some way. They really like this baseball card. They have associations to it. But in the end, here's this, or a stamp. Okay, they like stamps because they like the history of them. But all of a sudden, it's a stamp that's a mistake that's printed upside down and it's worth millions of dollars. It really doesn't make any sense. It's just a way of storing, of agreement where people are storing value. Yeah, but of course I thought of it and then I tried to create one and then I got so lost in Coinbase and the various other markets for it that what I understood about eventually, it's all about celebrity. It's all about celebrity and it's a kind of association. So Jack Dorsey's first tweet sold for $2 million. And I guess what you have is this, essentially what you actually have is just this thing that records that you did that and is associated with that. And somebody, now I've made myself nauseous just talking about it. It's like really, it's interesting. The Rotary started off here, this very nice session with, we're going to go someplace to a park. We're going to clean it up in the real world and make some kid or somebody it more pleasant for somebody rather than schemes. You know, their schemes in one way or another is what it seems to me about. And it just seems like you guys are on the right path. But and if I ever get an NFT, I'm going to donate it to your Rotary Club. That's what I've decided. I'm going to get it.
Thank you
All right,
very
look,
much.
Look, guys, it's been great talking with all of you. I really enjoyed it, and maybe someday we'll all meet in the real world. And I admire really what you're doing, and God bless you all. Like I said.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, it was a real pleasure.
It was great meeting. Okay, thank you. Great meeting. Thank you, Myron, for being here, and Joyce and everybody. We'll see you later.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Joe.
Am I gonna ring the bell?
Bye, Rebecca.
Bye, Rebecca.
Bye, Rebecca.
Bye, Dave
I'm just gonna
Olson.
leave Chris here.
Bye-bye, KT.
We're live with Groucho Marx.
Bye, Mark.
What is that? Bye, Miles.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
All right, that's enough.